From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Gulf Coast studios, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I'm your host, Andre Johnson Jr., because Sean Fazende, as you can see, is not with me in the Gulf Coast studios. He is out in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. It's got some really big Saints implications, but before we get to that, make sure to like, share, subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that button so you get the bell notification every time we drop an episode and you don't miss any fire content. So Sean, looks like a great day in Mobile. You've been watching a lot of football. What's going on out there?
What's up, Andre? Greetings from the Senior Bowl here in Mobile, the annual trek to South Alabama's campus, University of South Alabama, that is, here where the Senior Bowl has been last couple years. I don't know if you can see behind me. The national team, not the American team, the national team is currently practicing on the field at the time of the taping of this podcast. So the team with Nussmeier and Saints coaches, they'll go on after this about 4 o'clock here at South Alabama Stadium. So it's been an interesting couple of days. Tuesday's work was interesting. Not as many people out here as there have been in years past. Feels like today, though, maybe a little bit more, just from a media standpoint. I don't know if that's something to do with the weather around the country or whatever the case may be, but it just didn't feel like there was quite as many people here this year as has been in years past. But the work is still the work. Everyone's getting their work done, doing their best to, scouts and front office personnel, they're trying to scout the talent on the field. The talent on the field is trying to prove why, they're worthy of the draft selection. So let the NFL offseason begin. This is always sort of the first stop on the road to the draft, so it's always a fun week.
Yeah, and we plan to really dive into the Senior Bowl today, and we will, because like you said, you talk to a lot of Saints coaches that are coaching the American team. You talk to Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback for LSU, whose draft stock could really greatly be affected by this game and over the next couple of months. But then something happened yesterday. Demario Davis, Saints linebacker, was talking to Kay Adams, and Kay asked him about his future in black and gold, and Demario was a little coy on the subject, Instead of saying, oh yeah, I'll definitely be a Saint, he was kind of, left it open-ended, which led us to today's big picture topic. Could the Saints really be in jeopardy of losing their best defensive player, Demario Davis?
Oh, this is such a great topic that crept up on us as you watched the interview with Kay Adams and Demario Davis. I think he was in his car when he was doing that interview. Certainly looked like it to me. Watched that interview a couple times, and then I watched it a couple more times. It was interesting to say the least because we had all the big question when Demario's season ended, and for Demario, the player at his age, was is he coming back or is he retiring? Well, it seems to me that there's another option on the table, and he definitely had a poker face on, didn't he? Didn't want to seem too committal to anything. He said, my job is to play in the NFL. I'll be back in the NFL next season. Definitely, like you mentioned before, playing a little bit coy. And you can kind of see the host, Kay Adams, getting really, no way. What am I hearing? She's almost dumbfounded and surprised by this. And, I don't know if I can say I was surprised, but this is a veteran. He's been around for a long time. He went as far as to say, he's been watching these defenses and these teams that are going throughout the playoffs, and went out of his way to say something to the effect of a lot of those teams are just kind of missing one or two pieces on defense to get over the hump, and seems to, at least to me, Andre, imply that he could be that missing piece, being, I think, something like they call sort of the general in the middle of a defense that understands what's happening to get everybody set in motion. Kind of be the missing piece for a team that needs that veteran presence. So it was very enlightening. It was something that I don't think we were expecting at this stage of the game of the offseason to hear Demario Davis talk openly about what he is, which is a free agent, and the fact that the market could be calling and he could be responding or picking up the phone if that market calls. I think it was his way of saying, I'm not taking a hometown discount. So if that's what you had in mind, I'm getting full market value for my services. I'm not taking a hometown discount based off of the years of experience and what I'm still able to do. And I think market value for his services includes career high in tackles, another 17-game season, another 17-game season. Think about that. He's the same age as the head coach, and yet he just had another 17-game season at the linebacker position, at the Mike linebacker position. Has not shown even the slightest smidge of letting up. Like, you don't necessarily see that old saying, I don't need to see it every day, but I still need to see it. Well, you see it every day with Demario Davis, and this is a guy that has shown no drop-off whatsoever in his play, like I said, despite being the same age as his head coach. In fact, weren't they teammates here, out here, coming in through the draft, he and Demario Davis? I think that was the case, if I'm not mistaken. And understand, while he's saying this, and you may be caught off guard, or you may be surprised, but understand, he does have probably the most amount of leverage of any of the other veterans when you talk about what the Saints are dealing with in this situation. As I mentioned before, another 17-game season. I'm not sure what his snap count was, but it was very, very, very high this year for a guy that's 36, 37 years old. Even in Cam Jordan's situation, was coming off a really good year, 10.5 sacks, double digits, showed no sign of really dropping off. But if you look behind Cam Jordan, you still got players, right? You still got Chase Young. You still got Carl Granderson. This is going to be a good draft for edge defenders as well. But behind Demario Davis, has anyone ever come close to even giving you any inkling that they could give you anything remotely close to what Demario Davis gives you? Now, part of that is because Demario is always available. He's always around. He's always available. He's never hurt. He takes every single snap. He never comes off the field. So I don't know who the Saints could potentially turn to behind Demario Davis, where you would not see any dip or drop off in the entire defensive system, because he is the quarterback of the defense. He is the guy he talks to the most with Brandon Staley. He is the guy taking it from the defense to the entire team. Everyone talked about last year in terms of keeping the locker room together, never letting it get too far out of control. When they started off, 1-8 or 1-7, whatever it was, they all pointed to Demario Davis, and he's just basically saying, I want market value for my services. My question would be, though, Andre, is what is market value for those services? Does he want to be the highest paid linebacker in the game? Does he want to be top 5, top 6? Does he want a multi-year deal at 36, 37 years old? It seems like at this stage of the game, you'd probably, even if it's on paper a 2 or 3 year deal, it's probably realistically in practice a 1-year deal, and just kind of take it in 1-year intervals from here on out. But I will also say I do think the Saints want him back. I do think the Saints certainly admire what he does on the field, respect what he does on the field. I do also think they don't know a life without him. They don't know a life without him since he's gotten here. And this is a guy that's been here since 2018. I said when he signed, it feels like he's been here his entire career. You forget he was with the Jets and the Browns at one point. Imagine that. Then coming to the Saints and obviously having all the success that he's had. But to me, this is good old-fashioned gamesmanship by a guy that's entering the market, views his market a certain way. Now, I will also say, you can want the market to react to your services a certain way. There's no guarantee the market outside of where you are is going to react that way, because, as I said, he is a 36 or 37-year-old linebacker, and I'm not sure what you're going to command on the open market. But I do think that was a little bit of a call it a warning shot. Hey, I'm not taking below what I feel like I'm worth, and I think that puts the Saints and everyone else in an interesting spot as they go forward, because I know they have them in their plans. It's just what's the market and what's the number they can agree upon.
Yeah, you talked about the snap count. In 14 of the 17 games this year, he played 100% of the snaps. He played almost 1,100 snaps this season, Sean. I mean, so essentially, he was on the field at his advanced age every single play this season, and that's remarkable, for a middle linebacker of all spots. It's not like he plays a soft, cushy position, and when it comes to performance, career high in tackles last season. Then he comes back this season, a year older, and beats that, another career high in tackles. So Demario Davis, you could argue, is playing his best football at the age that he's at. And I think it comes down to a similar conversation we had about Cam Jordan. You know, when we talked about Cam Jordan and whether Cam Jordan would come back to the Saints, the question we posed is, should the Saints bring Cam Jordan back? And I said, the question really should be, should Cam Jordan want to come back to the New Orleans Saints? And I think that's what it comes down to for Demario Davis, because it's no question. Demario Davis is the best player on that defense. He's one of the 3 to 5 best players on your entire roster. As the Saints, you would obviously want Demario Davis back. But look at Demario Davis. Think about the teams you just named, Sean. You named the New York Jets, who are not exactly synonymous with winning. You named the Cleveland Browns, who are not synonymous with winning. And over the last 4 or 5 years, the Saints haven't exactly been synonymous with winning either. So Demario Davis, outside of that really short stint when he first got here, in his long career, has not exactly been in a position where he could legitimately contend for a Super Bowl. And as an aging player that's done it all, I mean, All-Pro, Pro Bowler, you know, he's had the honors and he's had the career highs and the tackles, the big plays, all of that. The one thing he hasn't done is win a championship. So as the Saints, can you sell Demario Davis that with this new quarterback that you've got in Tyler Shuck, who could be your franchise guy, that this team can make a second-year run like the Patriots have made, like the Bears almost made, like the Broncos almost made with their second-year quarterbacks? Or is it going to be a bit of a process, you know? Because Demario Davis doesn't have time for a process, especially because he has a good relationship with the head coach in Denver, who was just in the AFC Championship game. I'm sure he has a good relationship with the defensive coordinator in Chicago, who was a game away from the NFC Championship game. So, you know, for Demario Davis, it really comes down to, does he want to stay a Saint? Can the Saints give him what he wants in the last 1, 2, 3 years, however many he has left in his career? And Demario Davis, as a competitor, obviously would want a chance to play in the big game that he's never gotten a chance to play in.
Yeah, I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle, is his own career aspirations in terms of winning a title, and where does he place that on the priority list in terms of where he wants to play in 2026? Because I think we all agree the Saints can be better next season. Yeah. Can they be Super Bowl contender next season? Crazier things have happened. Look at the New England Patriots right now with a second-year quarterback. But is there a better opportunity to get there with another roster? You know, you mentioned the Bears, you mentioned the Broncos, 2 playoff teams. I'll throw another team out there that had dealt with a lot of injuries this year, the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers dealt with a ton of injuries. Could you imagine with Demario, San Francisco, and Bosa and Warner and all those guys? I could, you know, you can certainly see a ready-made franchise needing that one last feeling, that one last piece of the puzzle to get over the hump. And look, Demario was on the 18 team that, you know, lost to the no call, on the 19 team, which was playing incredible football to close out the season, ended up losing to Minnesota the first round of playoffs. They got upset. Really was a bad game played all the way around by them. And really since then, he hasn't come close. And as the years go on, how big does that weigh into your plans? We know with Cam Jordan, look, he may want to win a ring. I think he certainly does want to win a ring, but I think him winning a ring with the Saints probably means more to him than anything else. Yeah. Demario, I would think it's high up there, winning one and also winning one with the Saints, but can he realistically get there in enough time to where he has to call it a career? And those are factors he'll have to ultimately decide. I will say he was very high on Tyler Shuck. I will also say this roster has kind of hit the bottoming out and it's kind of on its way back up. So you can certainly feel the momentum. So this would be a much more coveted place for a player like him, and say, if you were to ask him that in week 6 of the last season. And then the final piece, of course, is monetary value. What can you pay him? Is it $10 million? Is it $11 million? Is it a $2 million with incentives? Because it doesn't sound like that's not what he wants, and that's not what he's going to accept. So very interesting couple of months ahead for Demario Davis, because doesn't sound like, as we sit here today, that he's quite as sure about coming back to New Orleans as maybe we all thought he was.
Yeah, you know, we mentioned Cam Jordan. Another difference between him and Cam Jordan is Cam Jordan played about 50% of the snaps with the Saints this season. If he were to go to a Chicago, if he were to go to a Denver, who we know what that pass rush is capable of, that 50% would drop. there's a good chance that Cam Jordan might not play as big of a role on another team that's contending as he would with the New Orleans Saints. That is not the case with Demario Davis, because Demario Davis is playing his best football. There were 26, 27, 28 teams that Demario Davis can go to and start immediately and play just as big of a role as he did with the Saints. But one thing that did reassure me about Demario Davis, you talked about, he spoke very highly of Tyler Shuck, and that's true. He also spoke very highly of Saints defensive coordinator Brandon Staley and the job that Brandon Staley's done with that defense and the position that he's put them in. And we've talked about it on here. Brandon Staley was an elevator. He took the level of everybody on that team and he raised it. Chase Young, career year. Kool-Aid, huge second-year jump. Quincy Riley, Jonas Sanker, big contributors as rookies. Cam Jordan, they thought he was washed. He got 10 sacks out of Cam Jordan. Danny Stutzman, the interior off the defensive line, just what Staley was able to do with that defense. We've noticed it. Demario Davis notices it too, and hopefully he opts to stick with that system one more year. And you talk about the Saints system. That kind of has to do with what you're out there doing right now, Sean, at the Senior Bowl, because right now, the seniors that are practicing are having an opportunity to practice in the Saints system, that Brandon Staley system, that Kellen Moore system. What have you seen from that out there in Mobile?
Yeah, it was an interesting day. This is the other team behind me, so this is the practice 2 of the American team with Joel Thomas and Peter Sermon and Scott Tolzien. They'll be here in a couple of hours on this field, about 4 o'clock. They're scheduled to get out here. But I do think when you talk to the coaches, you get a sense that this is a very unique opportunity. You get an up-close look at these players, but this is even one step further because they've had prior assistants be assistants on these staffs in years past, but none of them were the head coach. And none of them had this many guys in the key positions. I mean, because you have the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and head coach. So you're talking about, for the most part, that's a vanilla version, obviously, but you're seeing these guys run your system in 2026. You will see Kellen Moore's offensive system. You will see Brandon Staley's defensive system. So first practice was interesting because it was it definitely reminded me of a Kellen Moore practice because it really took a while before they got to team drills and teamwork. It was a lot of one-on-one stuff. It was a lot of other drills before they got to actual teamwork. But, you watch it. Guys are trying to find their way a little bit. I'll just give you some observations just from what I saw on that team. The guy for me that really jumped out was Notre Dame wide receiver Malachi Fields. You look at his grades, they're a little all over the place. Some have him as late set first, some have him second, some have him third. But he's 6'3", 200 pounds. When you watch him out here, really looks the part. Can play outside, can play inside. I know he's not a burner in terms of speed. Him running will have to will kind of make or break his draft stock, but you can really see him fit into this system. So that really was something that really jumped out to me with the American team. Some other observations, obviously, Garrett Nussmeier is here. Aaron Anderson is here. Barian Brown is here. There was a report that Chris Hilton was going to be here, added to the roster today. I don't know if there's some sort of injury. So keeping your eye on LSU players, I will say Garrett Nussmeier. What I didn't realize was just how deep that injury he was dealing with really impacted him. He talked a little bit about it yesterday. And this was his first day on the field since, that Alabama game where he got benched and was hurt and didn't come back, hurt himself in practice or whatever it was. But he was dealing with that all year. And I asked him, how'd it go today? He goes, man, I was shaking some rust off, but felt good to get back out here, get into rhythm a little bit. You can kind of see it, in that the oblique, that core, you're using so much torque right there with the turn, and it really impacted his play. That's why I think he has the most to gain of any quarterback in this pre-draft process here. I thought his day was a little bit up and down and made some nice throws, operated the offense, a lot under center stuff, but also you can tell he wasn't quite there with some of his throws based off of that core injury. So hopefully that'll get better as the pre-draft process goes along. Hopefully that gets better as they're out here this week. It gets better, and hopefully he's able to shine in the Senior Bowl game, because right now he's probably QB3 or QB4 in this class. He's got a chance to cement at least QB3 status and hopefully go up draft boards, because like I said before, when he was healthy in 24, he did really good things and was a Heisman contender coming into 2025. Started the year pretty good in 25. Then obviously the injury, is it he played bad? Was it the injury that forced him to play bad? Was it inconsistency? everyone's going to have their own opinions, but I do think there's enough of a health issue to at least provide a reasonable reason for the play, which I think can help in terms of explaining his dip in production in his senior season. So I think he's got a lot to gain. One player, Aaron Anderson, hopefully he picks it back up on Wednesday and Thursday's practice, because he struggled a little bit in Tuesday's practice with alignment, had a couple of drops. Small guy. He's about 5'7", but he's lightning fast. Did have a couple plays in one-on-one, so that was interesting. We'll see what Barry and Brown can do here today, and Chris Hilton can hopefully do here today at the Senior Bowl. This team behind me is interesting because you and I were talking about the measurements, and the first thing I noticed when I walked out here was just how much Diego Pavia is every bit of 5'9". I mean, it was significant, the size, when he was next to the linemen and next to the other quarterbacks, although he did play well. I thought he played well yesterday. I thought the size was pretty significant in terms of the lack thereof, if you will. He's just not a big guy. So I'll be curious how that translates to the next level. I was doing my best to look at the interior linemen. One name that I noticed was Keelan Rutledge. Look, he would be a mid-round guy, and I saw some people were low on him, some people were high on him. But what I noticed about him was the fact that he was playing left guard, center, and right guard. And you just look at it, maybe that's a mid-round possibility, which is where the Saints have, they've hit it. They've struck gold in that mid-round when it comes to interior offensive linemen. So, look, it's a Senior Bowl, a lot of prospects, there's a lot of things happening at once. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything, but the Saints are compiling data on all these guys, both the team, their coaching, and also the other team. And then they're also, the prospects are trying to, impress the Saints, not just Saints, but all NFL coaches and GMs. And remember, the Saints place a high value on this game. 7 of their 9 draft picks last year all played in this game. So this is a big part of the puzzle for the Saints.
Yeah, and the main thing I can think, listening to you talk about these guys, is, man, am I glad the Saints don't need a quarterback this year, because the quarterbacks are just all over the place. You've got Fernando Mendoza, he'll probably go 1. Dante Moore decided to go back to school. Ty Simpson really doesn't have a huge resume behind him, so there's a lot of questions there of where he'll go. And then you mentioned, after those two, who are kind of the consensus 1 and 2, where can Garrett Nussmeier fall? I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, coming out of 2024, was being projected as a top 3, top 5 pick in this draft. If you can sell GMs and the decision makers on the fact that his struggles this past season was based off of injuries, Garrett Nussmeier maybe could work his way up to the first round. Stranger things have happened in the NFL draft. It's all the time that you see quarterbacks who necessarily weren't in that conversation, and then all of a sudden they go to a pro day, they go to the combine, they're at the Senior Bowl, they put together a few good performances, they do well in the interviews, and all of a sudden a guy who you were thinking might be a day 2, day 3 guy jumps up to be a day 1 guy. So, Garrett Nussmeier definitely has a lot to gain from this whole process. Diego Pavia, I don't want to say a guy is undraftable, because he did have a good season this past year, but 5'9"?
Yeah.
When you look at there's 2 short quarterbacks in this league that come to mind, Kyler Murray, Bryce Young. The Cardinals are probably going to be looking to move on from Kyler Murray, and Bryce Young is a quarterback who's 3 years in and really hasn't made a huge jump. And I watch a lot of Panthers football, so when you watch Bryce Young, he doesn't have it like Drew Brees was a shorter quarterback at 6 feet tall, but Drew Brees was an expert in finding those windows in the middle of the offensive line, so where he can make those throws in the pocket. Bryce Young doesn't necessarily have that ability. If you watch Bryce Young, notice every throw he makes over the middle of the field, he has to put touch on it, because he can't put velocity on it from the pocket. If you see any Bryce throw with velocity, it came on a play where he had to scramble outside the pocket, and that's not feasible to do frequently in the NFL. So when you look at a Diego Pavia being that small, you kind of wonder, man, where could he possibly fall? So the quarterback situation in this draft, it's a horrible year to need one if you're not number 1 overall and can get Mendoza. So it's good that the Saints can look other spots, like the interior offensive lineman that you talked about, like the wide receiver that you talked about. We've all been, gung-ho about Jeremiah Love, the running back. He's not there, but to look at the running backs, to look at the receivers, to look at the interior offensive linemen, and look at these positions that you need immediately instead of not having to worry about quarterback, I'm just glad the Saints are in that spot.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, and just to piggyback on what you said about Nuss, potentially, with a good pre-draft process moving up, I'll take you back to 1 year ago right here. Two examples. I mean, we were here to watch Jackson Dart, but if you recall, Jackson Dart was not a first-round graded player when he got here. He became a first-round pick, obviously, by the Giants. And then no one was on the Tyler Shuck camp or on the Tyler Shuck radar until it started right here in Senior Bowl in Mobile. So Tyler Shuck was another one who had a fantastic pre-draft process, and look where he ended up. Probably franchise quarterback material for the Saints.
Yeah, exactly. So the Senior Bowl, it's one of those parts of the offseason that gets glossed over, you know, but it's really important for these guys who are kind of on the borderline to make that last statement, Sean. And as we've got about 2 minutes left, you guys are going to get to talk to Jeff Ireland, you know, with the Saints in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What's kind of the feeling you're expecting to come out of that conversation with?
Yeah, I want to get a sense of where they're at in terms of where they feel like they're strong roster-wise, where they feel like they're weak roster-wise, where they feel like they can address those weaknesses in the draft. What is the area where this class seems to be producing the most, because that's never evenly distributed. I mean, it could be a great class for receivers. It could be a great class for tight ends. It could be a bad class for D tackles. It could be a great class for tackles, but not guards. It could be a great class for outside linebackers, but not safeties. I mean, you understand what I'm saying there.
Yeah.
So where do they stand in terms of the class? It's a very early process. So they've compiled, you know, all this data from college scouting. Now they get in front of them. Now they kind of see him up close and personal, which makes a difference. You know, you watch Diego Pavia on TV, you see something, you see him in person, you're like, whoa, that's he is not nearly the physically what you thought he was going to be. And sometimes that can scare off a team. Sometimes that can excite a team. So it's just a matter of, you know, where they feel like they are, and then where they feel like the last year's class can make the biggest jump from year one to year two. Because if that happens for the majority of those guys, then you can talk about Saints being a playoff team next year.
All right, guys, you stay warm out there. We'll talk to you in studio. We'll be back on Friday, and we can recap the Senior Bowl and get into a lot more stuff, of course, having to do with the New Orleans Saints. But that's it for Overtime. Thank you guys for joining us, and please join us again next time on Overtime.